Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Radney Crawford, and today we're going to be focusing on just one team and one team alone, and that is RFK Racing. Coming off the heels of Chris Buescher's win at Richmond, locking himself into the playoffs, I feel like this would be a good time to give a little look at this team and what they have been through, their ups and downs over in recent memory, and the resurgence of the team with the addition of Brad Keselowski. So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. If you're looking to get an upgrade or update on your hunting apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go. Well, right now you can go check out their spring 2023 collection where they have numerous shirt designs for both turkey hunters as well as fishing. Also, they have a sale going on right now with their long sleeve shirts. So if you're wanting to get a head start on your winter collection, hunttoharvest.com has it all ready for you. And they still have that mystery box special going on where you can get 3 shirts chosen at random sent to you for just $33. Be sure when you go to checkout to use that promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY18923 for even more savings at checkout at hunttoharvest.com. So before we dive into the current state of RFK Racing, I want to go back to the mid-2000s, back when this team was simply known as Roush Racing, and they were the powerhouse team of the NASCAR Cup Garage. At this time, NASCAR did not have a limit on the number of cars each team could have, and Roush had 5 in their stable, with Hall of Famers Mark Martin, Matt Kenseth, as well as future Hall of Famers Kurt Busch, Greg Biffle, and Carl Edwards. And also at this time, NASCAR was just starting to tinker with the point system in the Cup Series. What we know now today as the playoffs back then was the chase for the Cup. And only 10 drivers would be in that chase for the final 10 races to go for the championship. And Roush was able to get all 5 of their drivers into the lineup, which means they took up half of that chase field. Now, while they didn't win the championship, just the fact that they were able to get every single one of their cars in it speaks to the dominance that this team had. So just to give you an idea on the level of dominance that Roush Racing had at this time, from 2002 to 2008, Roush Racing had gotten 63 wins, 2 championships with Kurt Busch and Matt Kenseth, 293 top 5 finishes, and 18 top 10 points finishes. So to compare that with another top team in the Cup Series garage, Hendrick Motorsports, during that same time frame, Hendrick Motorsports got 72 wins, 3 championships with Jimmy Johnson, 267 top 5s, and 14 top 10 points finishes. So as you can see right there, Roush Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, they were neck and neck on the most dominant team in the garage. For Hendrick, you can credit a lot of that with Jimmy Johnson. He got those 3 Cup Series championships, as well as a good chunk of those 72 wins as he was beginning his run of dominance in the sport. Now, after 2008, that's when you started seeing the decline of Roush Racing. From 2009 to 2021, the year before Brad Keselowski came into the fold, Roush only got 24 wins, 169 top 5s, and 10 top 10 points finishes. And the fall off really didn't start for Roush until 2014. By that time, Mark Martin had retired, Stewart-Haas Racing had Kurt Busch, and Matt Kenseth had just left for Joe Gibbs Racing. And once Kenseth left, that's when you really notice the decline of Roush. Take Greg Biffle, for instance. He went from being a driver you could count on to get you a playoff spot, getting north of 10 top 10s a season, to being a driver who couldn't even get over 5 top 10s in his last couple years with the team. His last win with them came in 2013, and his average finish in 2012 was 10th. Well, by the time his last year rolled around in 2015, it had fallen all the way to an average finish of 20th. As for Carl Edwards, he was a guy you could still depend on to get you a couple wins each season, but just before he left for Joe Gibbs Racing himself, you could start to see the decline. Not as sharp as Greg Biffle's, but the stats were starting to fall off. Take, for instance, in 2011, Carl only had 1 win, but was able to get 19 top 5s and 26 top 10s. Compare that to his last year in 2014. He did have 2 wins, but only 7 top 5s and 14 top 10s. And once Carl left for Joe Gibbs Racing and that left just Greg Biffle, this team went from consisting of Daytona 500 champions, Cup Series champions, Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, to unproven raw talent like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Trevor Bayne. And in Trevor Bayne's time with the team, he never finished inside the top 20 in points. For Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he was with Roush for 7 seasons. He only finished inside the top 20 in points twice. That was in 2017 and 2018. That's not an indictment on the talent of Ricky or Trevor. Rather, it's an indictment for the state of the team at the time, and especially from a competition side. You look at Ricky, he was a 2-time Xfinity Series champion with Roush. He's now with JTG Daltrey Racing. He's just won the Daytona 500 this season and is competing at a pretty strong level for the single car team. And for Trevor, he's a former Daytona 500 winner. He ran a part-time schedule just last year for Joe Gibbs Racing, the top team in the Xfinity Series, and was consistently a front runner, was competing for wins, was leading laps. It wasn't a talent problem because this team went from 2015 to 2017 without a win. And in 2017, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was able to get in the victory lane twice at Daytona and Talladega. But after those two wins, Roush wouldn't go back to victory lane again until just last year with Chris Buescher. The team simply seemed to fall behind the times, especially with the amount of resources that started becoming available over the past few years. They went more reactive than proactive, and that hurt them. Now, they did attempt to make some positive changes, like bringing back Matt Kenseth for a part-time schedule, splitting time in the 6 car with Trevor Bayne. A smart move. Matt Kenseth can bring a lot of knowledge, especially with him being a former driver and champion with the team. And after that, they signed Ryan Newman, a very smart driver and a guy who can give you a lot of feedback, a smart veteran of the sport in the 6 car, but nothing seemed to be able to steer the ship back in the right direction. Which brings us to the current times. When Brad Keselowski bought into this team and became a part owner last season, hopes were raised that this team would be able to get back to where they were, competing for wins and possibly for championships, and they have. Last year was a bit of a struggle for the team, which was expected. It was the first year with a next-gen car, but you saw flashes of potential. Chris Buescher ended the season with career-high numbers in top 5s, top 10s, and laps led. While Brad Keselowski, he did have a down year, which was, again, expected. He's coming from Penske Racing, one of the top 4 teams, to a struggling Roush. But you still saw the potential. Brad was able to get a pole at Texas, his first pole in 2 seasons, and have strong runs at difficult tracks like New Hampshire, Darlington, and Sonoma. Meanwhile, Chris Buescher, he brought the team back into victory lane at Bristol in an impressive race. And at the time of this video, both drivers are inside the playoffs. Chris Buescher locking himself in this past Sunday with the win at Richmond. Meanwhile, Brad Keselowski does have a healthy point gap between himself and that cutoff line. Now, for Chris, he is back to his old consistent self that brought him an Xfinity title with Roush back in 2015, and Brad's knocking on the door for victories. With the way he's running, you got to think he's going to be in victory lane before the end of the season. And I think they are both primed to make their way through the first couple rounds of the playoffs with the consistency they're showing. They're picking up stage points. That is going to be huge for the beginning of the playoffs. So looking at the future of this team, I do expect them to continue to improve, to get stronger, to the point where as soon as next year, we could be talking about them as week in and week out race-winning contenders or dark horse championship threats. And if they're able to do that, one has to ask, could we see this team return to the Xfinity Series or to the Truck Series for driver development? Or could they open up a third full-time Cup car? If they go the driver development route, that is a huge strength of Brad Keselowski's. Back when he owned his own Truck Series team, a lot of big names he put in his team, such as Parker Kligerman, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, Daniel Hemrick, Chase Briscoe. He has the pedigree to do this and to develop future stars of the sport. And with the future bright for RFK, like it is right now, anything is possible, and any of those things I just mentioned could happen. And that'll wrap up today's episode of 3 Wide. Thank you, as always, for joining me and watching along. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you will know when our new videos drop, including our weekly Fantasy Pick Shorts. And also, be sure to head over to hunttoharvest.com. The link to that website is in the description below. Go check out their amazing selection of hunter apparel, and be sure to use that promo code RADNEY18923 at checkout for even more savings. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will see y'all next week after Michigan.